3, 2, 1.
Here we go! Woo! Happy Freight Friday. Today we are talking about sketchy lease programs. Welcome back. We got a new season. I see Grace is here. We got John. I saw Matt Fink somewhere. Amanda Miller is in the house. What's everybody drinking this Friday? Let's see. I've got a Red India Pale Ale. Ron will know what to do about that, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Today we are talking about sketchy lease programs. We haven't. I think Adam and I talked about this at one point in time where we were going to really shine a light on these lease programs, and they're important. Because I know some of y'all out there, shippers and brokers, are like, what do I care about the lease programs? You care. Because when things are shady going on out there, that means that your goods may not be delivered on time or in order or successfully. So listen up so you can identify some of these shady issues as well. There's a lot of confusion with these lease programs. There's different types. We're going to go through them with our experts. I will be the first to admit here that I'm not an expert on this topic. I don't know much about it. I was a little spoiled. I worked for Schneider and we didn't have these problems. All right, I'm going to say it right now. And I know Matt is going to probably say the same thing. I'm excited to have you guys back. I know it's summertime, so everyone is out in the sun enjoying their Friday and hopefully going to be with us. Today's episode is sponsored by OTR Capital, my favorite factoring company. Brokers, you can call them too for factoring. It's for carriers, brokers, whomever, call them. The link is in the all the social media posts. I see people are trickling in, and Tim Pool's in the house. I miss Tim. All right, let's get started. First, we're going to introduce everybody. I want to first introduce, because y'all know Lewie. Everybody knows Adam. You guys have been on here before. And those of you who haven't, you're missing out. So we've got Adam, who's our trucking expert. He's all over social media. And we've got Lewie from OOIDA. He has this really big title, executive president of everything. Lewie, what are you drinking today, Lewie?
Smoky Mountain, Tennessee pecan whiskey.
Ooh, pecan whiskey. That sounds good.
Yeah, I don't get time for that lightweight beer stuff.
Oh, and the first shot has been fired. And Kristen, what are you drinking, young lady?
Hey, I have a high-pitch mosaic IPA.
Ooh, that looks fancy.
Delicious.
Oh,
It says
that's
hoppy
nice.
and tropical.
Hoppy and tropical. I like it. Danny's in the house. Danny, we haven't seen you in a while. All right, Adam, you go first because you have a special announcement to tell everybody. Because late last night, not late for me, Adam, okay? I know what you're about to say. It was like 8:30 at night, and I got a ping that you were on Instagram Live. And I went on, I'm like, oh, Adam looks so good in his hat, and he's saying nice things. But could you tell everybody what was going on and what's so special in your world? Because I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we all know that the driver shortage has always been an issue within the industry. I mean, as long as I go back to the early 2000s, late 90s when I got started in this business, it's always been an issue with driver shortages. But then with the pandemic hitting back last year, it put a really, really big focus and emphasis on the lack of the availability of training options for folks, particularly getting the opportunity to go to driving schools and getting a CDL. So what we did is we got together, myself and a couple of other successful CEOs in a variety of different platforms. One, and that's in a tech platform, Pierre Laguerre with Fleeting, and the other, Marcus Jones with 314 Logistics, who's a big time oil field logistics expert. We got together and said, hey, we got a problem, and the problem isn't the fact that we've got a capacity issue, right? So we realized that I don't think it's necessarily a capacity issue. We just think it's not cool to drive a truck anymore, So what we did is we got together and we put our minds together and we started a company called Next Gen. And we will be announcing what we announced last night. So I got to get off of that. But we announced last night that we'll be providing a new CDL platform that's going to be virtual reality based. So you will be able to do a lot of the functionalities of some of those modules within the CDL training directly in your living room through an Oculus device. So we're bringing it into 2021 and 2022 because it's time to kind of move things forward. So super excited about that. You know, we're also in the process of gaining some steam with it. We've been doing this for the last couple of months now, so we've got some really, really good feedback. So we're excited to say, hey, we're going after 100,000 drivers in the first 6 months to put behind the wheel of trucks. So
what's that website again?
www.nextgyn.us.
Love it. Thank you for telling us about that. That's exciting because that means like Kristen in all her spare time.
Yeah.
Kristen and we can learn how to drive a truck from the comfort of our living room if we want.
I think it's so cool. I was just going to ask, how young can people start with this Oculus virtual CDL training? Because I have 3 boys and I think they'd be all about it.
Yeah, you're like, time to get a job.
Time to go learn how to drive a truck, kids.
We're going to be visiting high
That
school.
sounds real safe to me.
We just want to bring the pride back into being a truck driver again. You know, a lot of times in these schools, man, it's all about going to college and getting a degree, man. But I remember when I came out, you know, when I was in high school, man, I wanted to be a truck driver, you know, and I was good with that. You know what I mean? So.
Grace says, Adam, love that idea. Let's connect next week. Grace is so badass. We got to get her back on. Todd Burke is in the house. I think people are asking what the website is, so you should drop it into YouTube or whatever, LinkedIn. And make sure also, Adam, your followers have found you on your laptop, so maybe do not disturb on your laptop too. It's so hard to be big time, isn't it, Adam? Louis, when are you going to lower the age of the CDL to 18? Is OOIDA doing anything over there? Or y'all just
You can already get your CDL at 18. You just can't drive all over the United States. You can only drive local, and we have no plans ever to do that because if you look, you need to be older to be safer. Everything shows that. We're well aware. We are okay with and probably believe that kids under 21 who get a CDL and drive locally, instead of it being a state issue where you can't leave the state, probably should be 150 air mile radius like the local provision. At OOIDA, we're for more training, longer training, a structured training, lots of behind the wheel training, and to help make drivers worth more and be more professional, like most skilled labor jobs, apprenticeship, possibly graduated license things. There is no driver shortage. There has never been a driver shortage. There's a driver pay shortage and a huge driver retention problem.
Amen. I respect the fact that you said that, because if you were a real corporate man, real corporate gal, you would have said, oh, yeah, let's lower that because then we'll get more members and make more money.
I spent my life on the road for 25 years. It's a very dangerous place to be.
It is.
It takes a lot of maturity and a lot of ability. And unfortunately, for years and years and years, drivers have not been paid correctly or treated correctly for the amount of professionalism and skill they have to have.
We're supposed to be talking about sketchy lease programs, but I want to know one thing. Kristen, what do you think about what Louis said? Do you agree with him? I mean, you see accidents all the time. You know the worst of our industry and the best.
Yeah, I think age does play a huge factor, and the roads are dangerous. And so listen to the professionals. They want a little bit older age on there. I don't know. I'm not really into the, regulatory debate as to whether younger kids or 18 up should be driving. Maybe with programs that allow them to train earlier and get that experience and drill some of the more mature concepts into their brains before they're behind the wheel, maybe that would help get them on the road a little bit younger. But I mean, I have to think about my own boys when they're 18. Do I want them behind the wheel, going over the road across the country? I'll have to think about that one.
Adam, what do you think? Don't you think we're missing out on a big population?
Nah, I mean, the thing about it, I'll be honest with you, for me, it's the maturity. Right. So getting behind the wheel of a tractor trailer requires a different level of maturity, and when I was 18 years old, whether I had the skill to drive a truck, because that's what I did when I was 11. I had the skill to go through the progressions and things like that, but I just didn't have the maturity and I just didn't have that aptitude. But I don't think putting someone behind the wheel of a tractor trailer, 18-year-old is going to solve the issue. I'm not necessarily a big fan of that. But I do think that we need to put it into our schools and our trade schools and really kind of promote that, hey, this is a heartbeat of America. This is one of the things that, is essential to our economy. And I think that the pandemic really, really pointed that out, that I'll be honest with you, and I'll argue with anybody that wants to take it with me. There is no more essential industry than transportation. You can even say the medical field, but like, hey, how you think the medical supplies gets to you? It comes by the way of logistics. So I just think that pride has to go to the forefront. One thing I will say, Lewie mentioned, like, hey, what, there's not a driver shortage or a pay issue. Like when I first started driving, I was getting paid 23 cents a mile, right? I was making like $600 a week, and I thought that was good money. We got drivers out here to make $2,000 a week, and we still got the issue. So it's not the pay. It's not the pay, right? I think it's a lot more to it. Like, it's like I remember literally, and the skill is so much different, because when I got started driving, there was no such thing as automatic transmissions. It wasn't even a thing, right? So it's less skill now. So they're paying more for less skill. The truck does a whole lot more than it did back then. So less skill involved, and they're paying more. So, I mean, at some point, it's always going to be more money, always going to be more money. So we got to get to the root cause of the issue, and it's not just pay.
Yeah, can I chime in on that? I have when you talk about the root cause of the issue, why the trucking industry is not as popular or well known or well appreciated as it should be, from the legal standpoint, representing the industry, I mean, I can see that there is a clear public campaign going on. Every billboard you pass, in Florida, especially as a prime example, puts it out there that the trucking companies are bad. They're demonized. They're made out to be absolutely terrible. Well, how is that encouraging people to get into that profession? How is that encouraging people to have a career in trucking when it's demonized by the plaintiffs bar? And no offense if there are any plaintiffs on, well, maybe offense if there are plaintiffs on the line, but it's just there. It's known. It's known in the industry that if you're trying to start to influence a jury pool, who's going to potentially be sitting on a jury when there's an accident involving a truck, well, we want the jury to think trucks aren't all that great. And so there is a campaign out there. It's very well known. Plaintiff bar works on it, and that doesn't help our industry very much. That might be one of the issues or problems, Adam, that you're dealing with.
Yep, that's a good point. Lewie, what were you going to say before we jump into leasing?
I was going to say there are drivers making $2,000 a week, but mass majority of long haul drivers who work for fleet are not making anywhere close to that. I mean, just the other day, ATA put out 53,000 or something like as average drivers. So that means some are making less. Your private fleets, your LTL carriers, they pay a lot more. Yeah. They don't have the turnover. They don't have the accidents. They have better safety. And, supply and demand, that's why the drivers' wages are continually down and down. If you would look at deregulation, since deregulation had drivers' pay kept up with inflation, drivers would all be making six figures right now. And there's so much of drivers in the long haul sector who their time is nothing. I mean, trucking's not your normal 40-hour-a-week job. Somewhere along the way, we got into this mindset. Trucking's a 70-hour-a-week job. You work 70 plus hours a week. You got to drive 70. These carriers and stuff have figured this down to a science to where they run you and get the optimum, which I get why they do it. But at the end of the day, you sit at loading docks, you sit in traffic, you sit getting your truck broke down, whatever, and you never get paid for any of this time. The only thing you're getting paid for is the time you're driving up and down the road. And $53,000 sounds like a lot of money and great, but when you're living on the road for weeks at a time and you have to pay for all your meals or pay for showers or pay for parking and all these things, when you start figuring that in, plus, thanks to Uncle Sam removing the in the tax code to where you can't write off your days on the road anymore, your per diem as a driver, you can't even gain that back. So I disagree a little bit. Pay is part of the problem. They need to be paid more, but they mainly need to be paid for what they do and not expected to have to work 70 plus hours a week. And mainly this is in the long haul sector.
We should definitely do a show a little bit more on pay, but also on the age of driving, because I think that's a really interesting topic. In light of us transitioning to our real topic, I think sometimes you guys, though, and I'm not a truck driver, so y'all are the experts here, but sometimes I'm like, we can send an 18-year-old to war, we can, like, maybe we are making our, an 18-year-old could probably do a great job. Are we not putting enough faith into them? And so, like, I go through that whole the whole thought process of, when they were, yeah, exactly. I saw your history, Lewie. Go ahead.
I was an 18-year-old in the military and drove a truck. Okay. Mm-hmm. But being in the military and driving a truck, or being in the military and doing anything, and I agree with you, I'm a supreme supporter of the military all the way through OOIDA. But my attitude, as Adam said, my maturity level and things like that were completely different when I was 18. I mean, I was driving a truck at 16 on the farm, actually at 12 and 13. I mean, I've been driving the farming machinery since I was 5 or 6 years old, which, yeah, I had the moto skills pretty well down. But as far as the maturity, I'm not, we all goof off. Not everybody, there's always exceptions. But the majority of us, we're not at that level. I wasn't at that level. Maybe I wasn't when I was 21 either. I mean, I turned 21 and went over the road immediately. But when you're driving truck or you're in the military, you pretty much have somebody around you, tells you when to eat, tells you when to sleep, tells you when to do this, that. There's always somebody there. You get in a truck and you're turned loose. I mean, you take an 18-year-old kid from Florida who's never seen snow, never seen the mountains. You're going to put him in an 80,000-pound truck and let's send him to Colorado in December or January? What's going to happen?
I mean, not just that. Then you put that same 18-year-old at a shipper or receiver with detention and dealing with those circumstances, right? So I remember even when I was, when I hit the road at 21 years old, I'm like, geez, like, you grow up quick out there, but at the same time, you got to learn how to interact with folks. So there's much more to it than the skill of driving a truck. There's the interactions that are required. And I just don't see an 18-year-old young adult being able to have those conversations, and not necessarily just having the maturity, that's one thing that I spoke of, but really not garnishing that respect that they need to be able to have those conversations at the shipper and receiver. I just don't see it.
I'll defer to you guys. You guys are the best people to make that judgment. I'm like, give our 18-year-olds a chance. All right, so let's quickly launch into the lease program. Kristen, you're going to go first. I want, if you could just give us like real layman terms, high level, what are the different types of lease programs out there that are available? Because people get confused. They just hear lease and they're like, okay, I just lease a truck. Cool.
All right. Well, you just asked the lawyer to give you a high level summary.
I know.
So
I know how you are. You're running a practice. You've got kids. You're all traveling all over the place. You can do anything.
Right. I will do my best. The disclaimer, I didn't hear your disclaimer, Cassandra, but I'm going to give it. I'm a lawyer.
Give it.
This is not legal advice. This is not related to any one specific situation. If you have a circumstance involving a lease and you have a question, I am not here to answer that question today as an attorney-client relationship. So give me a call if you want to establish that. But I will give you an overview generally on the circumstances where folks are leasing. And we're really, I think what we're really talking about here are mostly carrier lease programs. And I'm looking at my colleagues to see if they're nodding their heads or shaking their heads, but it's typically a lessor, which is an owner operator, the person leasing the truck from the company. The lessee is the company leasing the truck to the owner operator. Why do people want to do that? Well, a lot of times they want to have their own vehicle, but they don't have the upfront capital to invest to be able to go out and just buy a truck off the lot. They also perhaps want the pay scheme and the independence that is offered in being a leased on owner operator as compared to an employee of the carrier. It just kind of depends on what the individual who's looking at the lease wants as to why they would lease. And I think we'll talk probably more about that later. Generally speaking, leases in the industry are extremely heavily regulated. We can thank our friend Lewie and all of those over at OOIDA for some of those leasing regulations.
Oh, she said it right, Lewie.
And they're there to protect people. They're just incredibly confusing, probably about as confusing as the piece of paper you look at when you sign the lease. I could spend this entire show going through the elements of what should be in the lease, but You can also find those elements if you look at OOIDA's site. If you look at the regulations, it's the Truth in Leasing Regulations. If you Google that, you'll see what they are. But there are some kind of key things that you must have in your lease that is regulated by law. The lease has to say who the parties are to the lease. You have to know how long the lease is going. You have to know what equipment you're leasing. But I think the most important thing is you have to know how you are going to be paying that, how you're going to be paid as an owner operator if you're leasing on to a carrier, and how you're going to be paying for that equipment. That comes down to the method of compensation, whether you're getting paid by the mile, percentage of revenue, by the tons, whatever. And that all needs to be stated in the lease. So it's not just like leasing anything, any plain old thing. A car specifically is what I'm thinking of, but it is something that is specifically regulated for this industry and involves the manner of compensation of the driver, of the owner operator. So that needs to be stated very, very specifically. How you are going to see your payments along the way is quite important. What your settlement statements are going to look like, the detail of any deductions, and this is where people, I think, get caught up, and I think we'll probably talk about that a lot because I think this is one of the biggest issues. But
yep, I think so too.
How you see what you're given to show what's being deducted, what you've agreed to. All those things have to be in the lease. If it's not in the lease, you have basically on its face a violation of the leasing regulations. And if you do have a violation of the leasing regulations, there are some judicial consequences that can follow. Particularly, I'm saying if the carrier did not put these things into the lease, there are ways for you to try to remedy the problem if you're having problems with the carrier, but better to do it out front than trying to chase it in a lawsuit. There's all sorts of other things, Cassandra, insurance.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into them, but I know for sure that you hit it on the head that we're going to end up talking about fees and whatnot. Before we dive in, though, I want to know. I want you to answer kind of a relevant question that somebody's already even asked me before the show, and I had it in my mind too. What's the difference between someone who owns their truck and has their own authority and someone who leases a truck? Which one is an owner-operator? What's the definition of an owner-operator? Am I picking a fight with Adam today? Yes, I am. Go ahead.
Probably. So if you're leasing a truck, you don't own the truck. So you're not an owner-operator, and you don't have the independence and ability to work for anyone you want to work for. You're leasing the truck, and it's under terms of a very specific agreement. So if you're an owner-operator, you're completely independent business. I think a lot of people really like these leasing programs because it's kind of a pathway to being a full-fledged owner-operator because, and this is one of the other issues that we probably need to talk about, a lot of times at the end of the lease, there's an option to purchase. And so
what are you if you've leased your truck from let's say Schneider, let's say CRE England, just so it's more neutral. Let's say I lease CRE England owns the truck. I've leased it. I'm making payments on it. I'm running under whose DOT? CRE England's DOT number?
Typically, yeah.
And am I an owner operator in that relationship?
It depends on who's talking. A lot of people call you owner operators there. I think layman's terms, people do say that. I don't think that's technically correct. Lewie wants to raise. I think the word lease operator is probably more correct.
I think you need to clarify something.
Okay.
There's lease purchase, which means you buy the truck or you're buying the truck supposedly from the carrier and then they lease it back to the carrier. There's buying a truck yourself and leasing it to a carrier, or there's buying a truck and having your own motor carrier authority. So we're really talking about three different things here. Leasing a truck, buying a truck from a motor carrier and leasing it back to that motor carrier, that's strictly a lease purchase. Buying a truck, leasing it to another motor carrier, and that, which is a very common thing in the industry, is two completely different things here. And just a little add-on so nobody gets confused here. You can buy a truck as an owner operator and it's your truck, but you can actually lease it. You're not leasing it from a carrier. You're making lease payments to a bank or to a truck dealer or a truck finance company, but it's still your truck. It's a tax deal and for tax purposes on what's the better. So just so we're all clear on what we're talking about here.
And I think you need to take it even a little step further, because those are not the only companies that you can quote unquote lease a truck from. You can go to.
Did you see his face punch when he says that, you guys?
I'm sorry. You could go down to a Lone Mountain leasing. You can go to an LRM leasing or an Accelerant leasing, and these folks are going to these companies, right, with the impression that, you know what, I'm buying a truck. The only difference is the title of the place that I'm buying the truck from has Lone Mountain Leasing on it, right? So at that point, if I go to Lone Mountain Leasing and I drop $15,000 in cash on a truck and I'm paying $2,100 a month, you damn right I own that truck. That's not a lease. And that's where they are taking that language, right? That's one of the problems I have with this industry. It's so much, it's so much snake language in there. That language is snake language to me, because you are misleading the public and you misleading the people on exactly what's going on. That impression, they're taking that and they're taking advantage of that, and that needs to be fixed.
Could you explain a little bit more?
In what way? I got all day.
Oh. So how, like, okay, so what's the most common arrangement?
All right.
Okay.
So what you could do, so like for me, let me just paint a picture. Me as a CDL holder, I go to a Select Trucks. They don't have, and let's just say I've got poor credit, okay? I go to Select Trucks, and when I go to Select Trucks, my credit doesn't qualify for me to get into their program to buy a truck. I still have the desire to be an entrepreneur. But then when I go online and I find Accelerate Leasing or I find the LRM, which they don't check my credit, I go over there with the same impression that I have to pay 142 weeks, X amount of dollars, whatever. That truck is mine, right? When I go title that truck under my DOT and my MC number, I don't lease it to a Schneider. I don't lease it to a Swift or a JB Hunt. That's mine. That's my MC number, my DOT number. I got to put the plates on the truck. I got to register the truck. I got to get IFTA, the KYU, the New Mexico, the Oregon. I got permit. I got all of that stuff. It's me. It's mine, right? I own that responsibility. So if I own that responsibility, right, and I own the process, it's the same process that if I went to a Select Trucks, then why is it treated differently to where I don't technically own that vehicle, right? That's misleading. And that in my mind is super misleading.
It is. Kristen, what's up with that? Wait, no, or Lewie.
Misleading when it comes to all this leasing trucks. There's so much misleading stuff out there. Like all these carriers say, walk away lease, walk away lease. I've never seen a walk away lease yet, ever. The first thing that we should be saying in any of this, if you don't have money and you don't have capital and you don't have credit, you shouldn't even be getting into the trucking business, period. That's one of the biggest problems with this industry, in my opinion. What other industry can you go into and start a business with no money, no credit, no nothing, but buddy, what sets you up in business? McDonald's isn't going to do that. Nobody else is going to put you in, it's not franchise, but any kind of business without money or credit. And there's no oversight over this stuff. It's the wild, wild west, unfortunately. And the amount of heartbreaking stories that we hear every day on a daily basis from these motor carriers. And then some of them try to mask it because they set up this little leasing company over here that's a completely different name. But when you start digging down through, it's owned by this company. And they'll let you, some of them will even let you lease to 3 or 4 different carriers.
Yeah,
Thing is, they own all those carriers. They control your wallet. They control everything. And if you walk away, they're coming after you and they're taking anything. The stuff that's in these leases, they can take your home. They can take everything. We see this every single day at OOIDA. And that's why we started things like our Truck to Success and different stuff like that to educate people. But the first and foremost thing and problem in this, when it comes to this in the industry, is, we shouldn't be wanting people to go into business without any money. They're subsidizing the carrier that they're leasing the truck for. That's what it comes down to. You lease purchase a truck from CR England, you're subsidizing the movement of CR England's freight.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to pay your taxes, they don't have to pay your health care, they don't have to pay any of this stuff.
No health insurance, Lewie, no benefits.
Exactly. And they're selling you a truck at an inflated deal. I mean, we got some friends down here in southern Missouri, just south of us, that they're big time in that. That's all their motto is. And they do the same thing, and they're selling these guys trucks at, sticker price when we know they're buying them for a lot less. They're making money on that. They're making money on the subsidization of freight. They make you buy their insurance. Then if, God forbid, there's an accident, they have the insurance set up so the guy paying for the truck never gets the money. They get the money. We see this day in and day out. This is why now we have this huge problem in California, and it's becoming a national with AB5 and some of these things. These are the things that started with, like out in California, these companies lease purchasing these port drivers and, sticking these port drivers. Well, California come in, something needs to be done. I don't think AB5 is the answer, but something needs to be done. Good thing, I'm going to put a plug in for me. If anybody out there is thinking about doing this, please call OOIDA, send us your contract, let us look at it. We will tell you anything and everything in there, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm not saying there isn't a few of these lease purchase companies that do help people, because there's an exception to every rule, but mass majority, this is nothing but a plague on the trucking industry. And that's what brings wages down, salary rates, everything.
Well, you kind of started to answer a question I was going to ask you, but is it your belief that there is any such thing as a non-sketchy leasing program?
No, I don't believe there's anything as a non-sketchy lease purchase
Adam's
program.
shaking his head too.
Lease purchase.
Now, when we talk about leasing to carriers and it's my truck, or it's your truck, whatever, and I own it and I've got that's a different story. But when it comes to lease purchase, I wouldn't recommend that, And again, I'm not saying there's not carriers out there that are trying to do. I'm not going to say that. But at the end of the day, no, I don't think. First and foremost, anytime we're giving people stuff like this who have no money and have no credit, we're already we're not helping. We're setting them up for failure. I mean, my boss, Todd, our president, me and him was talk about this a lot. And he said it the best. If someone can't manage a little bit of money, the last thing in the world you ever want to do is give them a lot of money. And that's so true. And that's what we're doing to people. For whatever reason, they got themselves in a bad situation. They need to work themselves out of that, figure it out, then go into the trucking business if that's their dream. I get it. I had the same dream since a little kid. I mean, I bought a truck when I was 22. I understand it. But you got to do it at the right time.
Adam? Oh, go ahead.
One thing I can also say is I think that the whole lease purchase program and the whole lease purchase thing I'm in agreement with that. There is nothing but sketchy out there. So when you think about that, it kind of reminds me, and I got to be very, very careful on how I say this because I don't want to offend anybody, but it reminds you of the rent to own industry, right? Like the rent to own companies where they kind of like you can buy a TV for like $80 a week and you pay for it for like 160 weeks and like you get to week 100 and you can't pay it anymore. Then guess what they do? They take it and then all of a sudden they pretty up, shine it up, put it back on the wall and sell it for another 160 weeks. If you think about this, right? If I buy a brand new freight line and I know that I know these guys are getting a deal on it. Let's just say you buy that brand new freight line for $100K, right? And you're going to run that truck as a company truck till about 300,000 miles. And let's just say, just for easy math, you're getting $2 a mile on that truck, right? So at 300,000 miles, that truck has grossed you $600,000. The average carrier is going to profit anywhere between 25 to 30%, right? So let's give you an easy 20%, right? So you take $600,000 times 20%, you've already grossed 120,000. I mean, you already netted 120,000, which pays for the truck. Then you put it out onto the lot and put a nice little tag on it, say, hey, here, lease purchase me, right? They put you on a lease purchase on this truck. They charge you $800 a week on that truck, right? They've already made $600,000 on that truck, already profited $120,000 on the truck. They put it on the lot and say, hey, at least purchase this truck at 300,000 miles because it's a low mileage truck that you're going to probably say, hey, you know what? This is a good deal. And I'm going to run this thing up till it gets to about 600,000 miles on it. You lease purchase this truck for $800 a week. You're paying $3,200 a week on a truck that's already been paid for, right? And not just that, on top of that, not only are you paying $3,200 a week on a truck that's paid for, then they're going to take a percentage of the freight that you're going to haul on it. So now you're only going to get paid a percentage off of the freight that you haul on a truck that's been paid for 4 times over. So it is almost like they're preying on the lack of, and excuse me by saying this, but it seems like they plan on the lack of education on these folks that get into this. They don't properly educate the people that get into this. They don't properly set us up. And what I mean by that, and I kind of agree with what Lewie was saying, there's a right and wrong way. They don't teach you the right way. Because if they teach you the right way, then they won't be able to profit. Most of these companies profit off of the fact that they're able to run these lease trucks up and they're able to run the bag up on these lease trucks. It's ridiculous. But they make so much money on these assets that they put in a lease purchase program that is ridiculous and it's unacceptable.
Why? It's to the carrier's advantage completely. It's all to the carrier's advantage. I mean, we have seen carriers here where they have brought guys to their orientation training. They hire them as drivers. They get them there. They spend 2 or 3 days orientation, 500, 1,000, 1,500 miles from home, whatever. You know, they get them out there. Then they finish and they're like, we don't have a truck to put you in right now. You know, it may be a week or so you can either go to a motel on your dime and, you know, we'll give you $25 a day to eat on or some silly thing like that. Or if you want to get on the road today, we can sell you this truck and we can make you an owner-operator because, you know, the president of our company used to be little and he understands and blah, blah, all this crap. And, you know, and what these guys do, they bring the money, you know, like Adam said, maybe lack education, maybe just they want, you know, opportunity arise. Well, I'm going to do this. Mainly they're hungry and they need a job. And so they get in these trucks and they get in these leases. I had a member call me one time, sent me his lease after he'd already signed it because now it's too late. And he's like, do you mind looking at this? They told me it's a walkaway lease, blah, 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 blah. So I looked at it, big carrier out of Kansas. And I called him, after I went through it all, I called him up and I said, did you read this? And he's like, they didn't give us time to read it. They brought us in, told us, handed us, and you know, told us to start signing these papers. We need to be ready to, like in 30 minutes or something. The first paragraph on the first page, the only paragraph on that page was, you were given ample opportunity to read this. You were allowed to take it to your attorney, blah, 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 and signed it. And I said, if you'd have just read the first paragraph, you'd realize. Like Adam said, it says in their lease, they're giving you a truck. When you return that truck, it has to be in the same order, workingly, performance, and everything as it was the day you got. Okay, if I buy a truck today, brand new, or even with 150,000 miles on it, I drive it for 2 years. The motor, the paint, the body, the tires, the bearings, the rear, none of that stuff is in the same condition it was. Even if I maintain it perfectly, it wears. It's all wear stuff. They can make you rebuild. If you turn that truck back in, they can sue you and charge you back to rebuild that truck from front to back the way they have these leases. And they're telling these guys to walk away.
Kristen, what's the consequence for all these lease? Like, let's say that some of these agreements, which almost all of them maybe, are in violation of the law, or the operations behind the lease is the violation. What are the consequences?
Well, do you want the real consequences or the consequences to regulations?
Yeah. Like
I think the real
stuff.
you know, this is a question we get all the time. The fact is that even though there are consequences in the regulation and you can do something about it, doing something about it is very expensive. And so, you know, there's a reality that if you find out that you've signed a bad lease and you need to have a conversation with a carrier about that, then you should go try to have a rational conversation as the first means of resolving it. But if it ends up that they're coming after you and, you know, you end up with just massive amounts of charges and offsets and whatnot after you've tried to return that lease or walked away from it, when you find out you can't walk away from it, all those things, the consequence is that you're going to have to take legal action, and that can be very, very difficult. So I would say the consequence is a lot of people get screwed. Now, that's not just unique to leasing. It happens whenever anyone violates the law. A lot of people get screwed, right? That's just kind of the reality of, unfortunately, the American legal system at times.
Can I ask you a quick question, Kristen?
Yeah.
For my own, is there? I mean, I know there's law, and of course, as you well know, we've already discussed. The OOIDA brought leasing regulations as far as 376.12. That was from us, and we have sued carriers for that successfully and helped kind of clean the industry up on that. You do have legal footing on that, but when it comes to signing a lease purchase contract of a truck, there really isn't anything, is there? You know what I mean? You don't really have it. If you sign a lease purchase to buy a truck from a carrier, which is separate from the leasing regulation of 376.12, there really is no legal recourse, is there? Because you signed a legal lease.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come down to the contract laws of the state where you sign that lease. Now, a lot
that's
of
interesting, Lewie.
Yeah. So if it was unconscionable, if things in it were not true, they were misrepresentations, all of that, it comes down to the contract laws. But then again, if it comes down to the contract laws and you find yourself sitting across the desk from me telling me you've been, screwed over because you had a lease and it was bad for whatever reason, what are you going to do about it? It's too late at that point, in my view, because you're just kind of like clawing out of a bad situation and going to have to maybe spend a lot of money going after it to try to get it righted. I mean, what are you going to do about it? It creates a really difficult legal conundrum. So the better thing is to read I think a lot of people would say not to sign the leases, but to at least read them and understand them very, very thoroughly before you sign them. Now, on the flip side, I will say I have heard quite a few stories of folks that have done lease purchases, and it's worked out well for them, because at the end of the day, they make their purchase and they're able to turn around and sell that truck for some type of a profit and then start all over again, and that gives them some of the cash that they need. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about that, because I've heard some good stories about it. Not all the time, but a couple.
So my personal opinion is probably 1%.
I don't even think it's even 1%, because I would love to know what those numbers look like, that they were able to turn around and sell a truck for more than they actually purchased that same truck for. Because if you think about the money that they're going to be putting into it, there's no way. So I mean, if you have, Kristen, then I'm all ears, but I really don't see that.
Well, I would say I agree with depreciation. I mean, there's no way. But I think what she's meaning, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there are people who made it, they've sold the truck, been able to upgrade, maybe whatever. And there are people, I'm not saying, I have a friend, he used to work for a carrier, and he didn't do it, but some of the guys there, and they did it, and they did fine. Now, they were working for an LTL carrier, which is a little different, of course. But like I said, we at OOIDA, we hear these stories every single day of the people's lives are destroyed by these lease purchases. They lose their home, they lose everything. They're in debt. I mean, we see people they're not even making a living. They're not making 30 cents a day living. Because everything's going to the company store. That's what it reminds me of. I'm from coal mine country. The company store, you owe your soul to who you bought that truck from.
So we're over in time, and I wanted to know from you guys, because really what I'm hearing is like a lot of red flags about these lease programs. I'm also hearing that instead of putting my money into a 401k, I should be a carrier leasing brand new trucks out after I run the loads. Like, I have a whole new vision of what I'm going to do with my future now.
Sandra, all my love for you will go away if you did something like that.
And it doesn't always go that well. I don't want to name all the names, but all you have to do is research the issue a little bit, and you'll see some very large settlement payments paid out by carriers who found themselves in sticky situations.
I mean, I literally Googled this, and I saw some big names up there too, and I was like, oh damn, I've been making money. Lewie, I could buy you another motorcycle with that money, and then you wouldn't hate me as much. You would come back on the show. You wouldn't be so upset inside.
I pride myself on everything I got. I did it honestly.
I'm going to remember that. next time you're mean to me, I'm gonna throw that back in your face when you're not being mean. Okay, so here's
nice
the thing.
to you.
You're as nice to me as Adam is. So, Adam has to go. He has this really big meeting with basically the president of the United States. I'm pretty sure, because his phone's going off again and he's distracted. So, Adam, why don't you tell us? Because it sounds like there's like, what are you drinking, Lewie?
I was drinking a little bit of iced tea. I got mixed with my pecan whiskey.
Okay, Adam,
I gotta go to a big party tonight, so I gotta save up.
Oh my God. So here's the thing. We started off the show and Kristen was like, oh, OOIDA did such a great job. Blah, blah, blah. But really, OOIDA has a lot of complaints about these leases. I don't think your work is done, Lewie. I think you guys got to get back on the horse and get some regulations in place and some oversight. Rah, rah, rah.
Well, if you pay attention to what we're doing, you see we're trying to do that every day. Maybe you should be helping us. You got this platform. Maybe you should be help building us up and helping push our message. And work for the good. Quit thinking about becoming a lease purchase carrier and start working for the good. Come from the
and
dark
a plaintiff
side.
attorney. I want to be a plaintiff attorney too. I'm gonna make lots of money, and then Kristen can take over the show. So
I'll never talk to you again.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you people? I just want to make money. Why can Adam be the only one making money and he doesn't get in trouble? So somebody tell me what are the good things about lease programs? Like what are some of the good things or good people or something good?
So let me back up a little bit. And it's one thing that we haven't discussed on this broadcast. If we haven't talked about full service leases. So there's a difference between leases. You've got your lease purchases, you've got track leases. There's different levels of leases, right? So when you think about you have your own motor carrier authority, you're looking to purchase a piece of equipment. You don't want to deal with the hassle of maintenance, repairs, breakdowns, and things like that. Then you go to a Penske or you go to a Ryder and you actually go through their lease program where you lease their equipment and they provide you with the maintenance, the upkeep, the whole nine. You can drive a brand new truck, the whole 9 yards. That's a total different discussion that we haven't even touched. We are really discussing more along the lines of the lease purchase, the lease to own purchase, and then the carrier lease on purchase. And for those who are listening, and if you're listening without the trained ear, you're like, what the hell are they talking about? Right? It's confusing, right? So I just dropped another lease on us that we haven't even talked about. So that tells you something even bigger, that there's an even bigger issue, is that the definition of what the lease truly is being used too loosely. So, but when I think about positive leases, now don't get me wrong. If you go out here and you go to Penske and you lease a truck, you're going to pay for it, right? It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you, and I'm talking about probably double what you would pay to go buy a brand new truck off the lot. But they're taking away that burden of responsibility when it comes to maintenance and upkeep, which is number one of the biggest things that these carriers go in and out of business with because they're not able to keep up with their equipment. So I do think that there's some good things with the term lease when it's used correctly. I think that there's bad things with the term lease when it's used loosely, it's used predatorily, it's used where, hey, I'm going to tell you in the first paragraph to make sure you read this whole contract, or if not, you're screwed. That's when I have a problem with it. And that's why I think that there's so many elements of it, because I can even tell you another story, and I'll make it very, very short. When I first started driving, I got my first truck when I was 23 through one of these programs. And when I go back at it and I start thinking about it, they had things from like you had to put money into a tire fund. You had to put money into a trailer fund.
I've seen that.
Am I lying, Lewie?
Yeah, and you never get it back. You'll never get it back.
You never get it back. I'm feeding money into a tire fund that I never get that money back. But that's the problem. How when I look at that, and I know, Cassandra, you asked me about the positives, but there's so many other things that are out there that are red flags that people need to know about. And that's what I'm talking about. But if there's any positives, that's it. I just gave it to you.
Okay. Well, I think Adam makes a really good point about the different types of things that we call leases. From a legal perspective, I don't care what the title is on top of the document. I care what the people agreed to, what the parties agreed to in that document what is the benefit that each party is receiving, and what are they giving in exchange for that? And is it clear? And if at the end of the day, you're not getting a benefit from whatever the deal is that you struck, then you shouldn't be striking that deal. And you should read the document real careful, because it doesn't matter if it says it's a lease or not. That does not make it a lease. It's entirely what you are agreeing to based on the terms. If someone puts a document in front of me, I don't care what it says. I mean, I get documents that in front of me that say bill of lading, and I'm like, this isn't a bill of lading. I get things that say, you know, carrier confirmation, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is on top of the document. It matters what is inside the document and what we call bargain for exchange actually is.
Louis, what are you telling your members that they should sign, they should agree to? What's good? Because right now,
Well, again,
it sounds like you hate everything.
Again, we got like both people, everybody has been saying, there's two things here. Lease purchase is like buying equipment. That would fall under the same category as far as, I'm not saying good or bad. There's a category of buying equipment. Whether you lease purchase from a carrier, you go to a bank and you take out a lease with a balloon payment at the end, or you lease a truck from Penske or a Ryder or somebody like that, you have that. Then there's 376.12, which is the leasing regulations, and that's where people take their truck, personal truck, and lease it to a motor carrier, so they're like a subcontractor, for lack of better terms. You're a subcontractor. Like I had my tractor trailer lease to Landstar. It was my truck, my trailer. I paid mine, did my thing. I hauled their freight. They paid me. There's those kind of arrangements. But what we've been spending all this time talking about today is purchasing trucks and those leases. I'm with Adam. At the end of the day, if you're going to buy a truck, if somebody calls here, first thing you want to do is we tell them to make sure you got money, you got some credit, and all that stuff. But we're past all that. If you want to buy a truck and you talk to your tax preparer, again, you should talk to a tax preparer, and they're going to tell you whether you should go get a balloon payment from a bank lease, or you should do a regular purchase, or whatever. With that being said, borrow the money from somewhere other than the motor carrier that you're going to be. Short and sweet. Don't buy a truck from a motor carrier that you're going to go work for, period. They have complete control. And worst, I worked for a lot of motor carriers, or leased to different motor carriers and different things in my life. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes you get somebody you don't like working for. My case, most of the time, they just didn't have enough. I was on a job, something would run out. They didn't have enough work to keep me busy, so I left and went somewhere else. If you buy the truck from the motor carrier, you're stuck there no matter what. You can't take that truck and go somewhere else. You're going to lose all your money, all your tire fees, all that stuff. First and foremost, I tell everyone, call OOIDA, let us read your contract. I have people here, they do this every day. They know what they're looking for. I also, if you're going to lease to a carrier, call OOIDA. We have a checklist thing. Right here it is. It's everything in 376 that should be in your contract to lease to a carrier by law. Everything that follows, what should be and shouldn't be in there. Like Kristen said about your pay, all that stuff. Those are things. What I really would like to recommend, I'm going to plug something, is if you think about buying a truck and you're out there listening to this, or you bought a truck and you're struggling, call us and talk to us about our Truck to Success program. It's in October. It's 3 days. We take you from beginning to end, from buying a truck, speccing a truck, financing a truck, business plans, insurance, permits, taxes, license, getting your own motor authority, finding freight, working with brokers, working with your own customers, taxes, all that stuff. There's no trucking
into an OOIDA commercial.
There's no trucking for dummies out there. There isn't a book out there, Trucking for Dummies. Arm yourself with knowledge before you ever spend this kind of money or get into this kind of business. Knowledge is power.
I like it. Except for the OOIDA commercial part. I think that...
you should come and watch the class. You might learn something, Cassandra.
Oh, I totally would. I'd be your top students.
I'd love to have you. October 26th or 28th.
For a carrier and make lots of money.
So I'd love to have you.
Adam, anything left you want to close us? Do you have anything you'd like to say? We're gonna go. You're gonna go meet with the president and be famous. And just so you guys know, whoever's trying to bail out right now, next week we have Benjamin Gordon with us, who is one of those smart dudes that tells us where our industry's going. And then maybe we'll do a pop quiz with him, and maybe Adam will show up one of these days on another episode. Go ahead, Adam. Do you want to close us out or no?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is, in all seriousness, all jokes to the side, I think most importantly, you need to educate yourself. Number one, before you step into this industry to take the leap, because there's a difference in working for yourself and being a business owner, right? You need to educate yourself on the difference. And as a business owner, you got to make sure you understand those things. It's not okay for them to put, things in certain languages and whatever it may be. But you as a business owner, you have the responsibility of taking those steps and ensuring that you understand the type of contracts that you're getting yourself into, and stop worrying about, hey, you know what, they tricked me into reading this language. You need to make sure that you arm yourself with the right knowledge. If you need to have an attorney, you need to have an attorney in order to make sure that you make the right decisions. But most importantly, if it sounds too good to be true, then I promise you, it is. It's too good to be true. And it really bothers me, Cassandra, because I just see honest people, right? I see honest people here that at the end of the day, they just want to be successful. They want to live the American dream. They want that freedom. And then we have dishonest situations where it kind of pulls them in to these programs to make them feel like, hey, you know what, you really got it. And at the end of the day, they really don't. So, hats off to you, Kristen. I know you get a lot coming your way. So definitely hats off to you. But at the end of the day, Cassandra, the biggest thing for me is education is so important. Knowledge is so powerful. And getting into this business, being an entrepreneur is not for everybody, right? It's just not. It's just because you can drive a truck doesn't mean that you can own a trucking company, period. And I hate to say that.
That's true. I watched this movie with these truck drivers driving across Alaska, I think, or on ice. Do you guys remember that movie? It's like
Ice Road Truckers.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, did you watch it, Louie?
Yeah, I've watched Ice Road Truckers before.
What the face? Why are you guys giving me? Okay, so for people who don't drive truck, it was pretty freaking cool to watch.
I think it's cool. Like I said, I think there's also that crazy show on there, Shipping Wars, but it's all,
I like all that. But that guy was like so excited to own his own truck. He was like, this is my dream. I want to own a truck. And I kind of felt bad for him because the first thing I thought of was, I was like, why? Why are you going to own a truck? It's so expensive and you get ripped off.
There's lots of predatory people in the trucking industry, and there's a lot of sharks in the water and drivers. And unfortunately, a lot of people out there will take advantage of good people. And that's why, like Adam said, you need to study and arm yourself because, again, knowledge is power.
Well, I brought you guys the experts for anybody who's listening to this and they're like, I'm overwhelmed. I'm in this situation, or I want to own a truck. And I just had all my dreams crushed by Louie and his Slurpee and whiskey. Just you guys, here are your experts right here. You got Kristen, you got Adam, you got Louie. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next week with the smartest man in freight. And guess what? It's going to be, instead of 2 o'clock Central Time, it's going to be 3 o'clock Central Time. We're going to be an hour later, which means I'll be an hour drunker for the show. Just want to that.
Can I be on that show?
Yeah, absolutely.